I thought I was visiting my son for a relaxing weekend. Instead, I ended up climbing out of a bar's bathroom window, running for my life. My own flesh and blood had put a price on my head. You won't believe how far I had to go to survive. The drive from Portland to Seattle was long, but I'd done it plenty of times before. 6 hours in my old Ford pickup, with nothing but talk radio and my thoughts to keep me company. I was 65, retired from the auto parts business, and looking forward to something simple. Dinner with my son, Lance. I hadn't seen him in almost 2 years. When Martha passed, we grew distant. He was busy with his life, his wife, his work. But now he'd called, said he missed me, wanted to reconnect. I took it as a good sign. When I pulled up to his Belltown townhouse, I was already stiff from the ride. My back ached from the potholes on I-5, and the Seattle rain didn't help. I popped the trunk and grabbed my old leather suitcase, packed light, just a few shirts, meds, and the picture of Martha I always carried. Lance was already on the porch, smiling wide, too wide. "Dad!" he called, practically jogging down the steps. "You made it!" His arms were open, ready for a hug. I gave him one, but not without noticing how tight his smile looked, like it was plastered on. There was a tension in his jaw I didn't recognize. "You okay, son?" I asked as we pulled apart. "Perfect. Just glad you're here." He laughed nervously, wiping his palms on his jeans. Then he reached for my suitcase, nearly dropping it. "Let me get that." "I've got it," I said, holding on. His hands were trembling, that wasn't like him. As we walked toward the house, he said, "Lucinda's making lasagna, your favorite." Through the front window, I saw her moving around the kitchen. She looked just like I remembered, warm, lively, always humming to herself while she cooked. When she saw me, she smiled and waved. "Orval, how was the drive?" "Long," I said, waving back, "but worth it." She seemed genuinely happy I was there, unlike Lance, who was fidgeting with his keys like they were hot coals in his hand. Something was wrong. He tightened his grip on my elbow as we stepped inside. "Dad, we need to talk. Seriously." I stopped in the doorway. "Then let's talk." "Not yet, just get settled. We'll talk after dinner, I promise." That fake smile returned, and the way he avoided my eyes told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a casual visit. This wasn't just a father and son catching up over lasagna and wine. This was the beginning of something much darker, and I hadn't even taken off my coat. The guest bedroom felt smaller than I remembered. Maybe it was just the mood, or maybe it was the way Lance kept looking over his shoulder, like someone might be watching. I unpacked slowly, shirts on hangers, pills on the nightstand. 40 years running a shop taught me the value of routine, especially when your gut told you something was off, and mine was screaming. After hanging my clothes, I took a glance out the window. Down below, Lance was in the backyard, smoking. When the hell did he start smoking? He used to lecture strangers on second-hand smoke. Lucinda hated cigarettes. She'd walk past smokers on the street with a wrinkled nose and a sarcastic comment. Yet there he was, pacing the tiny lawn, dragging on a cigarette like it was the only thing keeping him upright. His other hand kept running through his hair, back and forth, messing up the neat style he'd always kept. I watched him for a long minute. My son, the one who used to collect baseball cards and help me bleed brake lines, now pacing like a man waiting on a death sentence. He looked terrified. I sat down on the bed, joints cracking, and popped 2 blood pressure pills. Doctor's orders, no stress, but stress doesn't ask for permission. It just walks in, kicks its boots off, and makes itself at home. That phone call from last month, when he mentioned unexpected expenses, echoed in my mind. I offered to help then, but he brushed me off, said it wasn't serious. "Under control," he claimed. Yeah, this didn't look like under control. Downstairs, I could hear Lucinda humming in the kitchen, the sound of pots clanging and sauce simmering carried through the floorboards. Somewhere a TV was muttering about the weather and weekend traffic. It was all so normal, too normal, but Lance, he was unraveling in real time. I spotted him light a second cigarette, chain smoking now. That's when I knew. This wasn't just money trouble. This wasn't just overdue bills or a failed investment. This was something worse, something dangerous. I leaned against the window, watching him through the rain-streaked glass. My heart thudded slower now, the meds doing their job. But my mind kept spinning. Why was he so nervous? Why hadn't he just told me the truth right away? Because whatever he was caught up in, he thought it might scare me off. He was probably right. Down in the kitchen, I heard Lucinda laugh at something on the TV, and I felt a wave of guilt. She didn't know. She had no idea the man she married was falling apart. Maybe she thought he was just tired. Maybe she thought I'd come to help. And maybe I had. But not in the way any of them expected. Back in the backyard, Lance was flicking ash into the grass, glancing up at the house like he was waiting for something. Or someone. That's when I realized I wasn't just visiting anymore. I was walking into a problem far bigger than I'd prepared for. Dinner smelled like heaven. Cheesy, herby, nostalgic. Lucinda had pulled out all the stops. Garlic bread toasted just right, salad crisp and fresh, and that lasagna, the kind of meal that made you feel like family again. We sat at the table, candles lit, soft glow bouncing off the mahogany. It looked like a Norman Rockwell painting, but it didn't feel like one. Lance poured the wine. His hands shook so much he spilled it. Just a few drops, but enough to stain the white tablecloth. He cursed under his breath and dabbed at the mess. Lucinda gave him a look, more concerned than annoyed. I just watched. "Rough day at work?" I asked. "Something like that," he mumbled, eyes on his plate. We made small talk, shop stories, weather, books. Lucinda chatted about a new program she was running at the library, something with kids and summer reading. She smiled through it, but I could see the fatigue in her eyes. Whatever Lance was dealing with, it wasn't just his burden. She was carrying some of it too. Lance barely touched his food, just pushed it around his plate, cutting it into smaller and smaller pieces like he was dissecting his thoughts. I was halfway through my second helping when he suddenly dropped his fork with a sharp clink. "Dad," he said, and everything in his voice changed. "We need to talk, now." Lucinda froze mid-sentence. Her smile vanished. "Lance, maybe after dinner?" "No," he cut her off. "Now." He turned to face me fully, and I saw it in his eyes. Not fear, not panic, desperation. "Dad, I need money, a lot of money." I set my own fork down slowly. "How much is a lot?" He hesitated, then said it straight. "More than $1 million." The words hung there like a grenade with the pin already pulled. I stared at him, waiting for the joke, the punchline, something. It never came. "You out of your damn mind?" I asked, voice quiet, controlled. He kept going like he'd rehearsed it. "Your business is worth around 600 grand, right? Your house in Portland, maybe another 4, plus retirement, savings. If we act fast, we can liquidate." "We?" "You," he corrected. "You can. You want me to sell everything, throw away 40 years of work, just like that." "It's not like that, Dad," he said. "This is life and death. I borrowed from the wrong people. They want it back. With interest." "Who?" I demanded. "Who did you borrow from?" He waved a hand, dismissing the question. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that they're serious and you're the only one who can help me." Lucinda's face had gone pale. She was staring at her husband like she'd never seen him before. "I can lend you 200,000, I said after a long silence. "That's what I can do, cash, no questions asked, but that's my limit." Lance's face twisted like I'd slapped him. 200,000? He hissed. "That's not even close, that's a joke. It's what I can do without losing everything I've built." His voice rose. "You never supported me. You were always too busy for your precious shop. You missed my football games, my graduation. Now this?" I stood up, slowly, arms crossed over my chest. "I supported you your whole life. I gave you food, school, a place to come home to. You made your choices. Now live with them." He slammed his fist on the table. Glasses jumped. Wine spilled again, pooling across the cloth like blood. Lucinda was crying now, silent tears running down her face. Her hands trembled as she reached for a napkin. "Dad, please," he whispered. "You don't know what they'll do to me." "Then you should have thought of that before you borrowed from criminals." He threw up his hands. "Easy for you to say. You've played it safe your whole life. Never took a risk. Just sold spark plugs to old men and called it a legacy." "And that legacy is the only reason I can offer you anything now," I said coldly. "That safety is why you went to college, why you had any kind of life." Lucinda finally broke. "Enough," she snapped, standing up. "Both of you, just stop." Her voice, firm and raw, cut through the storm. "You're tired. You're angry. You're saying things you don't mean. Everyone needs to calm down before someone says something they can't take back." Lance muttered something and stormed off toward the stairs. The door slammed behind him like a gunshot. Lucinda began clearing the table, her movements mechanical. "You don't have to do that," I told her. "I need to," she said quietly. "It helps me think." I watched her, heart aching. For her, for the son I thought I knew. This wasn't the family dinner I'd imagined. This was the beginning of something I might not survive. It was past 10 when the house finally went quiet. Lance had locked himself in his bedroom, and Lucinda had retreated to theirs, the soft clink of dishes replaced by silence. I sat on the edge of the guest bed trying to catch my breath. Then came a knock. Soft. Hesitant. "Dad?" I opened the door to find Lance standing there, sweater wrinkled, hair a mess, and the desperation drained from his face, replaced with something closer to regret. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside and he entered like a kid who'd been grounded. He didn't sit, just stood in the middle of the room, arms folded tight. "I'm sorry," he said. "For dinner. For everything." I waited. "I know I came at you hard. I shouldn't have. I'm just scared." I didn't know where else to turn. I could still hear the anger in his voice from earlier, but now it was muted. Humbled. "I get it," I said. "But demanding I sell my life for yours? That's not how this works." "I know," he said quietly. "That's why I wanted to say sorry. And maybe start over?" I blinked. "Start over?" "Not everything," he said. "Just the rest of the night. A reset. You and me. Like old times. There's this little pub nearby, the Foggy Lantern. Cheap beer, no noise, we could talk, just father and son." I stared at him, unsure if this was a peace offering or another setup. "Why now?" "Because if I don't make things right with you tonight," he said, "I might not get another chance." That line hit deep. Martha always said people deserved second chances, even when they didn't. "All right," I said. "Let me get my jacket." Lance gave a small, genuine smile, the first of the day that didn't look forced. "Thanks, Dad." We left the house quietly, jackets zipped against the cool Seattle air. The Foggy Lantern was only a few blocks away, tucked between a pawn shop and an old laundromat. The kind of place with a single neon sign and a regular crowd of locals. Inside, the warmth hit instantly. Wood-paneled walls, low lights, the faint smell of beer-soaked floors and fried food. A baseball game played on the TV above the bar. It felt like 1985 in there. We took seats at the bar. The bartender was an older guy with salt and pepper hair and military posture. His name tag read Marvin. "2 pints," Lance said, and Marvin nodded. The beers arrived cold, with just enough head. Lance raised his glass. "To second chances." I clinked mine against his. The beer tasted clean, sharp, and for a moment, just a moment, I believed him. We talked. He asked about the shop. I told him about the new kid I'd hired. Couldn't tell a wrench from a socket at first, but had heart. Lance laughed, told me he still remembered organizing spark plugs during his summer breaks. It felt good, familiar, but something still lingered. His eyes flicked to the door too often. His fingers tapped the glass like they were counting seconds. He checked his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. I knew that kind of nervous energy. Something wasn't right. Still, I forced myself to sit, to sip my beer, to keep the conversation going. Because if this was the peace before the storm, I needed to know what kind of storm I was facing. Lance excused himself. "Restroom," he said, tapping his phone. "Might make a quick call, too." "Take your time," I replied, masking my suspicion with a calm smile. I watched him weave through the tables toward the back of the pub, half-full beer glass left behind. Classic misdirection. As soon as he disappeared, the bartender, Marvin, approached, this time not with drinks but with purpose. He wiped the already clean bar with slow, deliberate strokes, then leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Nice evening for it," he said, like we were old pals talking about the weather. "For what?" I asked, confused. "Father-son time," Marvin replied. "Don't see that much anymore." He paused, glanced toward the back hallway, and then looked me dead in the eyes. "Your boy's real jumpy tonight," I stiffened. "You notice that too?" Marvin didn't answer. Instead, he leaned closer, his voice dropping to just above a whisper. "Listen, old-timer, we need to talk, now." Before I could react, he grabbed my forearm, firm but not aggressive. His demeanor had completely shifted, no longer the easygoing bartender. Now, he looked and sounded like a man who'd seen combat, and wasn't afraid of it. "What is this?" I asked. "You're in danger," he said plainly, "and I don't think you realize how bad it is." He nodded toward a hidden monitor built into the bar's underside. I hadn't noticed it before. "Watch this." The screen displayed a live feed of several security cameras: the bar interior, the rear hallway, the kitchen door, and the front entrance. Marvin tapped the main feed, rewinding it a few hours. "There," he said. On the grainy black and white footage, I saw Lance. But he wasn't alone. 3 men surrounded him, each of them looking like Central Casting's idea of muscle for hire. One tall and lean, with the stillness of an ex-cop. Another broad as a doorway, built like a linebacker. And the third, he had that quiet kind of menace like he enjoyed hurting people. Lance handed the tall one an envelope. "Money, payment." "Who are they?" I asked, though I already knew. "Jake Reed, Rico Sanchez, Tony Vespa," Marvin said grimly. "I've seen them before. Not together, but I know the type. Local muscle. They don't show up unless someone's about to have a really bad day." I stared at the screen. "Are you saying my son—" "I heard them talking," Marvin interrupted. "They were discussing your elimination. His word. Your son ordered a hit on you." I stared at the footage, my stomach sinking like a stone. Lance, my son, was shaking hands with these men like it was a business deal. Because it was. He wouldn't... I started, then stopped, because deep down I already believed it. Marvin's tone hardened. "He's not just desperate. He's made a decision. He thinks your life insurance is easier than your bank account." The pub around me seemed to close in. The cozy glow of neon signs, the background baseball chatter, the quiet laughter from the booths, all of it turned sinister. Any one of these patrons could be watching me, waiting for the signal. "They're setting up a perimeter," Marvin continued, pointing to the current footage. "One's at the front, one's covering the alley. One will come through the back. When the time's right, they'll corner you. Quick, clean, no witnesses." I could barely breathe. "What do I do?" "You get out, now, through the restroom window in the back. It opens to the alley. I've seen kids sneak out that way a dozen times, but don't run out the front. That's what they're counting on." Marvin reached under the counter again and pulled out something small. A knife. "Take this. It's not much, but it's better than nothing. And whatever happens, don't go home tonight. Don't trust anyone." I took it with trembling fingers. Cold, solid steel. My heart pounded against my ribs like a drum. "Why are you helping me?" I asked, stunned. "Because 27 years ago," Marvin said quietly, "someone's dad dragged me out of a firefight outside Kandahar. Said, 'No man gets left behind.' I live by that, and I won't watch you walk into a trap." On the monitor, Lance was walking back toward the pub's entrance, smiling, relaxed, like everything was just fine. He was coming back to sit beside me, drink another beer, maybe watch another inning, while 3 hired killers got into position. I stood up from my stool slowly. No sudden movements, no panic, because panic would get me killed. I nodded to Marvin. "Thank you." He gave a small soldier's nod in return. Then, like nothing had happened, he turned back to polishing glasses. I walked calmly toward the restroom, one foot in front of the other, heartbeat echoing in my ears. And I prayed the window was big enough for a man my age to fit through. The restroom door clicked shut behind me. I turned the lock slowly, click, every sound magnified in my ears. My heart pounded in my chest like it was trying to escape first. The bathroom was small, narrow, barely enough room to turn around. A single sink, stained mirror, rusted soap dispenser. The window was above the toilet. Frosted glass, maybe 2 feet wide, 1.5 feet tall. I didn't have time to question it. Didn't have time for doubt. I grabbed the edge of the sink and hoisted myself up, knees groaning in protest. I was 65, not built for this. Not anymore. But survival makes you forget age. The porcelain was slick. My right foot slipped once before I caught myself. I shoved the window open, rusty hinges fighting me the whole way. Cold Seattle air rushed in. It smelled like rain, fried food, and danger. My jacket snagged on the window latch as I squeezed through, ribs pressing against the frame hard enough to bruise. I gritted my teeth and pushed, and then I was falling. Not gracefully, not cleanly, just down. I hit the pavement in a half roll, instinct kicking in from a lifetime ago. Basic training when I was 20 and invincible. My knees screamed. My shoulder took most of the impact, jarring pain all the way to my spine. But I was out. The alley behind the pub was narrow, shadowed, and slick with rain. Dumpsters lined one side like sleeping beasts. A single security light flickered overhead, barely enough to illuminate the exit. I stayed low, breathing hard, every joint protesting. My body wanted to rest. My mind knew I couldn't afford it. Somewhere inside that bar, my son was probably checking his watch, wondering why I hadn't come back. Maybe he'd sent a text, maybe he'd already started asking questions. I moved quickly, sticking to the shadows, hugging the wall as I worked my way toward the edge of the alley. The pub's normal sounds, TV, laughter, clinking glasses, continued like nothing was wrong, like a murder hadn't been scheduled for tonight. At the mouth of the alley, I stopped. Voices, low, male, familiar cadence, Lance, and others. I edged closer, keeping out of the light, heart thudding in my chest. I didn't need to see their faces to know who it was. My son. The men he hired, they were planning something. I held my breath, listened. And in that moment, I knew. Escaping through that window had saved my life. But if I didn't listen now, didn't hear what they were planning, I might not get another chance to stop what came next. I crouched behind a parked pickup truck across from the pub, hidden in the shadows, close enough to hear every word. The streetlight above cast just enough glow to outline their faces, Lance and the 3 men he'd paid to kill me. This wasn't speculation anymore. It was real. "Tomorrow at 8, said the tall one, Jake Reed, Marvin had called him. "Make it look like a mechanical failure. Brake line maybe, something clean." "Same spot he always parks," Lance replied eagerly, like a kid reciting instructions. "Behind his shop in Portland. Every morning 7:30. He's a creature of habit." That stung. Not just the betrayal, but the accuracy. They were planning everything around what they knew I'd do. My routine, my predictability, my trust. "What kind of car?" asked Rico, the linebacker. "Old Ford pickup, 4-door. He maintains it himself. Changes his own oil, the whole stubborn old man package." Lance chuckled. They all did. The air felt like it thickened around me, every word pushing the knife deeper. "Security cameras?" Tony asked. The quiet one, the one who made my skin crawl. "None that see the back lot," Lance said confidently. "Street cameras are angled wrong. Shop cameras only face the front. We'll be in and out before anyone notices." I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but I couldn't stop listening either. $200,000 is low for a job like this, Rico grumbled. "Usually we don't get out of bed for less than $500,000. "You'll get more," Lance snapped. Once the estate clears, I'll double it. I've seen the will. Everything comes to me. Jake raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? I witnessed it myself when Mom passed. It's airtight. No charities, no girlfriends, just me. Then Lucinda, if something happens to me. That was when it changed. That was when it stopped being just about me. Tony asked, what about the wife? Lance shrugged like she was a piece of furniture. Lucinda. She won't ask questions. She's not that kind of woman. And if she does, Jake pressed, then she's not a problem we can't handle. That was it. That was the moment. The final straw. I could have handled being betrayed. I could have swallowed the heartbreak of knowing my son would kill me for money. But hearing him put Lucinda in the crosshairs, the woman who had welcomed me into her home, who cooked my favorite meal, who begged us both to stop fighting, he was willing to risk her life too. I felt something harden inside me, like a steel beam locking into place. This wasn't just about inheritance. This wasn't even about desperation. This was evil, cold, calculated, and it had my last name, had my... Tomorrow night, Jake said, shaking Lance's hand. We make your problem disappear. Lance's face lit up. A real smile. The kind I hadn't seen all day. The kind you wear when a burden lifts off your shoulders. He was happy. Happy that I'd be dead. Happy that it would be over. And he had no idea I was alive, 30 feet away, memorizing every word. They broke apart. The three killers headed toward separate vehicles. Lance checked his phone, then turned back toward the pub, probably expecting to find me sitting there sipping beer, none the wiser. He'd be back at the bar in minutes, maybe less. And when he didn't find me, he'd panic. He'd start asking questions, which meant I had just enough time to get ahead of this, to disappear before his perfect plan unraveled into chaos. I stayed low, moving back toward the alley. My knees ached, my chest burned. But I wasn't just a father anymore, I was a target who knew too much. And that meant I still had a chance. The streets were quiet as I made my way back to Lance's townhouse. I parked 3 houses down, an old habit from my days doing overnight stakeouts on stolen auto parts. Stay out of sight, stay in control. Lance would be back at the pub by now. Maybe he'd already realized something was off. Maybe he was still smiling, waiting for his victim to come back from the bathroom. He wouldn't wait long. Inside the house, everything was still. Peaceful. Lucinda's world was untouched by the betrayal brewing outside. The lights were off, save for a soft glow coming from the nightlight in the upstairs hallway. She was probably asleep, unaware her husband was arranging a murder behind her back. I moved quickly, no time to waste. The guest room felt colder now, like the warmth had been sucked out of it the moment I learned the truth. I packed with the precision of a man who's done this before. Shirt, pants, toiletry kit, Martha's photo, my essentials. The same hands that once taught Lance to change a tire were now folding shirts quietly, so he wouldn't hear me leave. I walked into the kitchen and grabbed a pen and a sheet of paper from the drawer near the phone. Lucinda deserved to know something. Not everything. Not yet. But enough to keep her safe. Lucy, your husband is in danger. If you love him, take the kids and go to your mother's tomorrow morning. Don't ask questions, don't call him, just go. Orval. It wasn't the full truth, but it was enough to save her life. I placed the note under the salt shaker. Somewhere she'd find it right away, first thing in the morning. I stared at it for a second longer, then turned toward the door. One last look around. The living room where we'd almost made peace, the stairs where Lance had stormed off, the kitchen where Lucinda had held it together. All of it had felt like family, until it didn't. Back in my truck, I drove away slowly, no squealing tires, no headlights blaring, just quiet retreat into the night. By the time I hit the freeway, the city behind me looked like any other cluster of lights, familiar but distant, the kind of place you remember only in fragments, until something drags you back. It took me 3 hours to reach Portland. The roads were empty. My thoughts were not. My phone buzzed. Lance, I let it go to voicemail. 5 minutes later, it buzzed again, and again. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the missed call counter was at 47. 47 unanswered calls from the son I used to carry on my shoulders. the son who had tried to have me killed. I killed the engine and sat there for a long moment, listening to the ticking of the cooling motor. I was home, safe, for now. But none of this was over. Tomorrow the real work would begin. The house was dark when I stepped inside. I didn't bother turning on the lights. I just stood there in the quiet, listening to the hum of the fridge, the tick of the wall clock, the creak of old floorboards that had always felt like home. Tonight, they felt like a warning. I was safe, for now, but I wasn't at peace. I sat at the kitchen table, Martha's photo in my hand. Her smile, frozen in time, offered no advice, but I could hear her voice in my head. Think it through, Orval, you always do. So I started thinking. Lucinda would find the note in a few hours. If she followed my instructions, she'd be gone by morning. Safe. Hopefully far from the crosshairs Lance had put on both of us. But what about him? What do you do when your own child wants you dead? Part of me wanted to call the police, show them the security footage, the envelope exchange, the murder plot I'd overheard word for word. Let the law deal with it. But another part, the part hardened by 40 years of running a shop, dealing with cons, crooks, and people who thought they could bluff their way through life. That part didn't trust the system to move fast enough. Not when the hit was scheduled for tomorrow morning at 8. That gave me, what, 9 hours? 9 hours to decide if I wanted revenge, justice, or just a way out. I wasn't the man I used to be. Not physically. But mentally, I was sharper than Lance gave me credit for. He thought I was just an old man. He forgot I spent most of my life spotting liars, fixing broken systems, and outworking anyone who came through my shop doors. And now, that experience was all I had to keep me alive. I'd survived the trap. Now it was time to turn it around. What do you do when your son hires men to kill you? You don't hide, you don't beg, you plan. Because tomorrow someone's going to be surprised. And it won't be me. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a blueprint for survival. When the people you love turn into your greatest threat, you don't freeze. You think, you move, and when the time is right, you strike. What would you do if your own child put a price on your head? Tell us in the comments. Like this video, subscribe for more twisted family tales, and remember, sometimes the scariest villains sit across from you at the dinner table.